Yeah, I can hear you, but I can't see any screen.
Yeah, don't worry. I'll be sharing the screen. So I just want to confirm if the audible or the audio is actually okay for now before I commence. All right, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, let me all know if you can see the screen now.
Yeah, I can. I can.
All right, thank you. So I would like to welcome us once again to the session 4 of the design training. And so it's, I believe that we all have had, a wonderful experience learning together. And this night is going to be amazing because we're going to be talking about an interesting topic, which I know every one of us as a designer, is part of the core things that we all, put in practice day by day. It's what you need to know. It's like just as we've been saying that, having a good foundation about design is essential so that you can be able to actually understand what it means to be a designer, and you can be able to play along, using the rules and everything you've learned so far, putting it together when we get to the practical level. So tonight we're going to be talking about layout and composition. So I'll be going straight to the presentation now. So firstly, we like to just know what composition is. So in many ways, layout and composition are the building blocks of design. So they give your work structure and make it easier to navigate from the margins on the sides to the content in between. So and the reason why composition is actually important is that is the way your content is arranged. You understand? So we all love to it's always good to have an organized design for people to be able to understand what part of the information is more important to the other. So when your design is well arranged and it's well composed in a very good layout, it makes people to be able to quickly navigate through your design and get the most important. Every design has a message to pass across. So depending on the message you want to pass across with a design, knowing how to arrange, knowing the ways and the practical ways of which you can arrange each of your elements to your image to your text is very crucial in design. So I'll be going to the next slide now. So we're going to be talking about the 5 basic principles, and design as principles. So part of the 5 design principles is, we have proximity, we have white space, we have alignment, we have contrast. I believe that in color theory that was taken yesterday, the tutor mentioned contrast and in hue and saturations and and so others. So and also the fifth one is repetition. So the key to mastering layout and composition, is to think like a designer. So you every day that you want to initiate a design, you have to think like a designer. So luckily, it's easier than it sounds. So there are five. Those are the 5 basic principles that you actually need to know as a designer. As a designer, designer, it doesn't mean that it only involves graphic design. As a designer, so design has different angles, different areas of design. So being a designer, you have to think like a designer, and in order to think like a designer, you need to make sure that you know these 5 elements very well, because it's part of what makes a good design. So we're going to be taking a look at each of these 5 principles of design one by one, so that you can be able to understand what each of them means. So number one is proximity. So proximity is all about using your visual space to show relationships in your content. So in
Sorry, God.
practice,
Sorry. Sorry, God. So sorry. We
yeah,
can only see session 4 on your screen. We can only see session 4 on your screen.
session 4.
Yeah, that's what we can see on your screen.
Okay, let me confirm that, please.
Yeah. All right, it's moving now.
Is it
Yeah,
moving
it's
now?
better now.
All
Yes,
right.
yes.
Okay,
Yes.
maybe I'll just have it presented this way. Maybe the full screen is not.
Yes, it's better now.
All right, beautiful, beautiful. So, and just as I mentioned earlier, so the 5 basic principles of designs are proximity, we have the white space, we have the alignments, we have the contrast, and we have the repetition. So, those, just as I mentioned, so I'll be going over these 5 basic design principles. They are the principles that guide every good design. Being a designer, you must make sure that you understand what each of these elements, all these principles does, because it's what make a good design. if you see a design out there that you really appreciate, is because each of these five principles has been put in place and done properly. That's why you can tend to say that, oh, this is a good design, oh, and this is a bad design. So, and that's why we need to, just examine what each of the principles does. So, number one out of the list is proximity. So proximity is all about using your visual space to show relationships in your content. So in practice, it's pretty simple, and all you have to do is make sure related items are grouped together. For instance, blocks of text elements in the graphic as in the example, which is at the right hand side. So we can see that the icons which are in cycle are actually grouped, they are grouped together. So we can see them that each of these elements are aligned. So why we have the typographies, which is the text, aligned to the left hand side. So it's all about making use of your space very well. The relationship between your space and your content and the elements in your design. So that's what proximity is all about. So we are going to be taking a further step in looking at it. So groups that are not related to each other should be separated to visually emphasize their lack of a relationship. So all in all, this makes your work easier to understand at a glance. So that's why I say that when you are making a design, the aim of the design has to be passed across. So if you want to show an information with your design, so you make sure that that design actually speaks what it's meant for. So I can remember in the last class that someone made an example of, okay, and I saw a design, maybe like a soap of wow. So what you foresee about this design is actually what the designer wants to communicate, what the person wants you to see at first. So it's very important that every of your elements are arranged according to to the family. So we can see the icons, which is the family tree at the right hand side here, that all the elements that are in circles, all the vector elements are grouped in to each other. So making a family tree of the icons of the image that is arranged. And also if you look at the left hand side, which is the old fashioned shortcake test ingredients, we can see that all these are arranged very well. Like they make use of a proper alignment, they make use of hierarchies, they make use of so many some of the design elements, which I'm going to be stating as well. So number two of the list is white space. So when you are talking about white space, it is very important part of every composition. So this doesn't mean that it doesn't mean literally white space. So it just means that all the negative space, like the spaces between your contents, between lines, and even other margins. So one thing, and getting started as a designer, what you need to actually be very mindful of is the spaces that you leave. The spaces you leave when you are designing matters a lot. So you must make sure that if you are going to look at this design, which is the on Western Real Estate Group, if you check the spacing at the at the top level bill and at the bottom, you say that they are proportionally equal to each other. And if you take a look at the spacings between the logo and the subtext as well, you can see that these are well spaced. So those are what are called white space. They are the spaces between each of your design elements. So they are the lines that you keep between each of the text so that you can be able to lay emphasis on what you want your reader to see at first. So we can say that they have been serving the community since 1976, far up, far below the Western real estate. So also the spacing that is in between the logo and serving the community is proportionally equal to each other. So then for the other addresses, we can say that they only have the white space, which is the margin, is left just it's the same as all other information, which is the address is just a one line before it comes to the to the number. So all this white space matters a lot in your design. So the more you give room for your design, the more it makes your design to be clean. So that is what you need to know about white space. So and also to further just buttress what I'll be saying. So and there's no way to use white space correctly, but it's good to understand its purpose. So that's just the aim. So it's not as if that okay, if I want to use this white space, how many inches or how many centimeters do I need to keep from my design to be able to make it look cool. So it's not about that. There's no actual measurement that okay, this is the one that you need to use. But what matters most is because what matters most is for you to be able to understand what this means and to be able to use it creatively. When we started this foundation, when we started this, this foundation of knowing the design theory and all this aspect is for you to have a good knowledge. There's called something in breaking the rule, because as time goes on, you tend to understand if you understand the rule, you can be able to break them creatively. So that's why in terms of talking about white space, it doesn't have a specific size or a specific unit which you need to put to be able to say, oh yeah, I need to do this, this is automatic. No, there's no automatic, because design has sizes, it has different mediums that you need to use. So depending on this, you determine the white space that you'll be leaving in a design. So it's just for you to give room for your designs to be able to breathe. So if your work ever starts to feel cluttered or uncomfortable, so a little white space might be just what the doctor ordered. So you can see this design at the right hand side, that we have enough spaces at the bottom and at the top of the design, and also it is well spaced from the icon, which we can actually say, okay, it's just the logo, maybe a logo or icon. There's enough space for it to breathe, and we can see how clean it is. So the more you understand white space, the more your design makes a lot of sense in terms of simplicity. So, and we know it's been said that simplicity is the hardest form of design, because simplicity is not about how much thing you can add, it is about how much thing you can be able to remove out of the design to make it look very good. So, and the next one that we're going to be looking at is alignment. So I know alignment is something that it's a kind of word that is we are familiar with. So, and in design, alignment is something you deal with all the time. You cannot do any design without alignment. There is no how you want to do it, because alignment is a very major thing in design. So in terms of alignment, it even shows, like, to be able to differentiate a professional designer from an amateur, just check the alignment. It is part of the things that you need to look out for. So in order to be able to make sure that your design looks very professional, you need to be mindful of your alignment. There are different types of alignment. We have centered align, we have left alignment, excuse me, we have right alignment, we have justify, we have full justification. So all these alignments matters a lot. So alignment is something you deal with every time. And if you don't realize it, whenever you type an email or create a document, the text is aligned automatically. If any of us is used to Microsoft Word, we take note that when you are typing, you can see the line spacing that is being put in the design automatically. So all those ones shows you the importance of alignment. So Microsoft Word is just like an automatic alignment for you. So you can actually choose, maybe you are using left alignment, the centered, or the full justified. But when you are typing, you notice that immediately you enter just some input some text. When it reaches the to the end of the page, it comes down and it gives a room for the spacing, which you can actually just adjust the margin when you in terms of the document. So alignment is what you need as a designer. You need to understand and to be able to make use of the alignment properly. So in terms of alignment again, so it's help you to make your designs to be actually look cool. So it might help to imagine your contents arranged inside of a grid, just like the example which is at the right hand side here. So you can notice that there is an invisible line centering each image to the text. So each grouping is also evenly spaced and aligned and with equal size margins. So, and it's this attention that detail that makes the composition easier to navigate. So without consistent alignment, your work could start to feel disorganized. So that is what I state, that in order to be able to understand and see if this person is actually a good designer, or a bad designer, what you first notice is their alignment. Every design that you have seen out there that you've appreciated is because the alignment was properly done. If there's anything that is wrong with the alignment, you might see the design, and even if you are not a designer, you just feel something is actually wrong about this design. You might not really be able to say what is wrong, but you just feel that something is not right, because our eyes are attracted to something that is it's attracted to a good design. When we see a good design, we understand, we know, and those are the things that makes a good design. So all these images that are here shows this center alignment. There we have see, here, speak. So all these icons are arranged to the center, the text are properly arranged, and it is well spaced. So that is what we need to understand about alignment. So I'll be going to the next slide, which talks about contrast. So, and contrast simply means that one item is different from another. So it's contrast is just like making sure that this item that I'm putting here is more important than this other one that is below. So in layout and composition, contrast can help you do many things, like catch the reader's eye, create emphasis, or call attention to something important. So, and to create contrast in the in the example which is at the right hand side here, it has been used, we have used color more than one style of text and objects of differing sizes. So this makes the design more dynamic and therefore more effective at communicating its message. So contrast is just about you laying emphasis that this and text I'm putting here is actually more important and laying emphasis on it. So you have to lay emphasis on some, and in terms of you make use of your proximity, you make use of your alignment in order to be able to differentiate that this item that I've put here is more important. So what you foresee in this design is okay, it's okay, I would like us to just talk about, like, okay, let's look at this design of this caution. What first draws your attention in this design? So I would like us to talk about this design that is at the right hand side. What actually draws your attention much? Immediately you see design, what do you first notice in this design? So I would like us to speak. I would like us to unmute our mic to be able to talk about this design.
The color.
Yeah, the color, but is there any text or information that gets your attention first?
The caution brought our attention.
Beautiful, beautiful. That's very correct.
The caution.
Yeah. So, and why do we think that the caution actually? Why do we think that the caution draws our attention more than the others?
Because it's the main thing you want to spread. We're talking about radiation, so we're trying to tell the person that this thing, you have to be careful before you go into it.
Okay.
What I sense is caution is more bold.
Okay.
It's more bold, and the color.
Beautiful.
It has a yellow background. It's kind of different from the other text.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you all. So, we can all mute our mic back now. So that is those are very good points that we've made. Firstly is about the text, how bold it is, and secondly is about the color that is being used. So we talked about color yesterday. The tutor talked about making use of contrast in terms of defining which to be able to make your design more appealing. So firstly is that the black on the yellow was used properly, and also in laying emphasis and making a contrast out of the others, they used color to do that as well. So the designer make use of a bold font and also to make it make a solid color out of it, then overlay with a black text. So if you see this as first, it draws your attention because it is actually different from the others. Even though the icon at the right hand side is big enough, but in terms of contrast, they have put enough contrast on the caution. That's why we can be able to say, oh, this is what I need to first see. So that is how design works. You must think like the person that needs to see the design. So you think like a designer, and also think about the people that are going to consume the design, the people that are going to see the design. You need to think like them as well. Like, if I do this design, what does it pass across to them? What information did I want them to see? So understanding that will make you to be able to know which part of your design needs to be, you need to lay emphasis on and need to be contrasted from one another. So, and to create contrast in the example, so it is very important that you understand what contrast is and be able to make use of it in your design. So, because that is what the person that you are passing the message across to is going to foresee. So, and the next thing that we're going to be moving to is hierarchy. So, and it's a very, very important and principles of design. So, and contrast is also closely tied to hierarchy. So, which is a visual technique that can help the viewer navigate your work. In other words, it shows them where to begin and where to go next using different levels of emphasis. So hierarchy is about knowing. It's just like having an heading. We have subheading, and then we have the body of the text, like text body. So, and it's important for you to know that, okay, when I'm laying emphasis on something, let's just use this document as an example. So if you look at this hierarchy that we had here and the body of the text here, we can see that I want everyone to be able to first see this hierarchy, and then before you can be able to take note of the body of the text. So it is very important that you understand which parts needs to, you need to lay emphasis on, which part needs to be bolder or to be bigger than the other one in terms of design. So you need to know, okay, this is the heading, then this is, the subheading, and this is the body of the text. So it is very important when you know the importance of hierarchy is about you laying emphasis on the text, making it bigger than the other to be able to get attention, to be able to create a contrast, and to be able to make the reader first see what you intend to pass across. So if a visual technique that can help the viewer navigate your work is what I want you to see at first, then I'll need to scale down the hierarchy and then make, all these lines to be bigger than the hierarchy, then reduce the size of the hierarchy, and also maybe the, the weight of the text as well. So hierarchy is very important. So it's closely related to contrast because they are passing same message in terms of laying emphasis on a text, contrasting it from the other, and to be able to make your reader to be or to understand what information they need to see at first at a glance. So, and to buttress the point as well, so establishing hierarchy is simple. Just decide which elements you want the reader to notice first. You can see, so what you want your reader to notice first, matters a lot. Then you make them stand out. So if it's save the date is what you actually want the reader to be able to see at first, then make sure that it is more bolder, or it carries a lot of weight than the other information. So we can say that when you see the save the date, you can immediately see, Corey and Anthony. So you see that next, even though we have it for the marriage, you lay emphasis on the major important, the major key of your design. So that's how you make use of hierarchy in design. So high level or important items are usually larger, bolder, or more eye-catching in some way. So that is what you need to know. Like, okay, what is hierarchy? Okay, what did I need to understand about hierarchy? What are the key points? In contrast and hierarchy work, in relation to each other. So you need to know which of the text needs to be bolder. And in terms of deciding which of the text needs to be bolder, you need to know which text actually you want your viewer to be able to see first. The person that the design is meant for, you need to understand and think how they are going to think. Like, what information matters most? Which information did I want this reader to be able to foresee? That's when you can be able to know which text needs to go smaller and which text needs to be bolder. So I'll be moving to the next slide, which says repetition. So, and repetition, it is a reminder that every project should have a consistent look and feel. So this means finding ways to reinforce your design by repeating or echoing certain elements. So in terms of repetition, so it tends for you to make sure that your design are consistent. You have a consistent design, because just if you have too much of text or too much of elements in a design, in terms of design, so it tends to not draw people, it tends to draw people's attention from the main point. So when you make use of repetition very well and you are consistent with it, it makes your design and look and feel to be very, very very, very okay. So we can see why we shouldn't have homework is just a text. In terms of typography, it's a single text that was used. Do we understand? So, and by Emily Cheng, age 10, so was actually another font, but we can say that it is very simple and it is well aligned and it is well proportioned. So there's not too much of element and it is very simple and it communicates what the designer meant it to do. So, and in terms of repetition, for instance, if you have a specific color palette, look for ways to carry it through. If you have chosen a special header style, use it every time. So that is one thing about consistent. You have to be consistent in design. Let's say that, okay, I want to make use of a color. So if you are making use of the color, be consistent with the color. Don't have too much of color in the design to the way that it distracts the reader from getting the main information. So that is what repetition and consistency is telling us. So you have to be consistent. Your color palette has to be, when I use a header, let's say that disadvantages of homework. If we take these disadvantages of homework, if we look at this text that was used, is the same thing as the text that was used in why we shouldn't have homework. So that is what you need to make, to be familiar with as well. And they make use of only two fonts. We can see here, we have the sans serif font by Emily Cheng, age 10. was same thing as they use in writing I don't like it, takes too long, boring, unfair reasons. Why the header remain consistent. So and with the header is serif and it is consistent with the one that was used in this other side on the other slide, which is disadvantages of homework. So in terms of typography, make sure that you use fewer text to make your design look clean. And this text, it's not something that okay, I use disadvantages of homework and the other slide I use another text. So this might actually distract your reader and the people that you want to be able to communicate with. So use fewer text and make sure that you have repetitions in your design. So and also it's not for aesthetic reasons. Being consistent can also make your work easier to read. Just as I mentioned, it makes the design to be easy to read and people to be able to follow along because your design, let's say you are designing a document, it's supposed to be a continuation of another one. So you have to be consistent in the text, in the alignment that you are using. So when viewers know what to expect, they can relax and focus on the content. So I already know that this is the text I'm following. So if I tend to see another text, it might just distract me from the main point which was made before. So that's why we can see in this design that every text that they have been using, every of their header has the same font style. So and the body of the text also have the same font style. So it is only two fonts that was made use in this design that the documents that we have seen so far. So and okay, putting all together, everything together, what the 5 principles of design. So you might say layout and composition are the unsung heroes of design. It's easy to overlook their role, but they are part of everything you do. So I mentioned earlier that these things are actually very, very important. They are part of everything you do. You must not overlook all these 5 principles. They are very, very, very important. And it is part of what makes a good design. If you see any design out there, all these 5 principles are made use of properly. This design that you can see that we are using to present make use of that 5 principles of design. So you must understand these 5 principles to be able to understand and to be able to make sure that your designs are on point and it is clean and people can be able to read through, understand and be able to appreciate your work. And having this solid foundation is you cannot just exchange it for any other thing. Some people take practical that okay, I just want to join the practical class. Practical, we in terms of practical, we won't be dealing about the theory aspect again. We'll just be moving into okay, you've understand what I'm trying to do when I'm making this text border. You need to understand that why I'm making this text border is that I want people to be able to catch. I want this to catch their attention first. I want this, this color I'm using. I don't want people to be, I don't want to get people blind because of the color. I want people to be, I want the design to be appealing and people to be able to read through my design. So all these things comes as a whole. So now putting all these things together, so the principles you just learned can help you elevate any project. All it takes is a little attention to detail and you can create beautiful professional looking compositions. So when you understand these 5 principles of design, I'm rest assured that you have no issue with design. If you can be able to understand that okay, this alignment, I want to use left alignment in this design, so then be consistent with the left alignment. If I'm using a particular font style, make sure that maybe I'm using let's say I'm using Montserrat for my header. So if I'm changing the header in the following slide, then this has to be Montserrat so that people can be able to follow along. They know you've already created a sense of the continuation of what you were discussing, so they can be able to follow through and understand what you are trying to do. So it's very important that you know these 5 principles. It's something that you need to go over, understand very well and know their importance, because all of this makes a whole. It is what makes a good design. You cannot say you know design and you don't know the principles of those 5 principles, because it is part. Either you are doing it you are doing it unintentional or you are doing it intentionally, this unconsciously or consciously. They play a very important role in every design. So if you look at the design that I have at this right hand side now, it talks about taste, modern, iterate, and you can also see, if I can be able to just zoom, you can see that this design makes use of, there's consistency in terms of the header. They only made use of this header for the taste. It is only a typography, one typography that was used in this. Then for the appetizers, the soup and salad, the main course, all these has same font. And if you check the body of the text, which is a list of the menus, you can see that they both carry same information. And the alignment that was used in this design is center alignment. So I believe that you will understand better on all this. We have the left alignment, we have the center alignment, we have the right alignment, we have the justify, and we have the full justify. But during the practical aspect, we understand much of what I'm talking about in terms of left alignment, right alignment, the centered alignment, and all this alignment that we need to use. But make sure that you understand all these 5 principles of design, because it matters a lot. It is what makes a whole in every design that you have seen so far, design you've appreciated. It is even involved in all this document that was being put together to take us through the journey of this design. So we've come to the end of the class. It's very brief, it's very powerful. I believe that most of us, we have questions and maybe like what we think, or some things that we like some clarifications on. So how it will be a pleasure to and answer all those questions. So I hope we've all enjoyed learning the basics of composition. So I'm going to be bringing in the moderator now. All right, thank you so much. So if there are any questions, so I believe that it's time for questions now if we have. Thank you.
Thank you so much, bro. Really appreciate it. Uh, how was the class, everyone?
It
How
was
was the
fine.
class?
It
Okay,
was fine.
thank you.
Great.
All right, thank you so much. So, do you have questions? Questions. No questions. No question in the chat box. Anyone with questions, please just raise your hand, and so we can take a question.
All right. If there are no questions, I would like to ask some questions, because I believe maybe like the class is well explanatory, because it's a kind of thing, it's a practical aspect, and it's also a theoretical aspect that we all need to know. So I would just like to ask some few questions if there are no questions from the class. So, and also, I would just like to ask, what do we understand in terms of when we are talking about hierarchy? What do we understand by hierarchy? If we have no questions, so I have a question for us. So, what do we understand by hierarchy? So, I'd like everyone to
All right,
unmute
so
and share.
follow on show anytime. If you have a question, please go ahead.
Sorry, I can't hear that very well.
Yeah, actually, I don't really have a question, but uh, I want to know if I get especially the hierarchy well with my
Okay, yeah, share what you
own
want to.
kind
Yeah.
of definition. So what about it based on this explanation is arrangement of text based on their importance.
Yeah. Are you still there? I don't think I get that. Sorry.
Is that what it means?
I don't think I get the question well. Seems you were breaking off in the middle. Yeah.
Can you please type your question in the
I
chat
just want
box
to know if
so that they will pick your question from
my
there?
knowledge about it is actually correct.
Please drop your
Okay.
question in the chat box.
Hello?
Yeah, we can still hear you. Just drop the question in the chat box so we can be able to understand. what you are trying to pass across, because the network seems to be bad. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
pros
another
legally, you can ask a question.
yes. Costly Bassey.
Pros, you raise up your hand.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, you are audible. Yeah.
Okay, I wanted to ask, using a drop shadow or a beveling buff for a text, does that can that be associated with contrast?
Using a drop shadow. One thing that drop shadow does is about making in making a laying it's also laying emphasis on a particular design. So depending on the hierarchy, the drop shadow actually it's just for you to it's a contrast. So that's what drop shadow does. It's just about adding a contrast to a particular element, because it doesn't actually mean you can add drop shadow to text, you can add drop shadow to icons. So depending on the aim, if you are trying to create a contrast between two elements, that's you can tend to use a drop shadow. So in terms of that, it's just a bit related. But in terms of this, if this contrast, let's say that I'm using this contrast on a design, let's say this body of the text, I'm using it on a design that I want to create a contrast between the design and the text. If I say that the background that I'm using is actually you know on covering or taking in too much of this information, and I want it to stand out from the background, I can tend to use a drop shadow, like it's just a face drop shadow. So hierarchy matters a lot. Hierarchy is just about you laying emphasis on some text. So and also it's if you are using a applying a drop shadow, depending on the aim, depending on what you want to communicate matters the reason behind you adding the drop shadow. So it's just about creating a contrast between two elements. So if I had a drop shadow in this hierarchy, that means that maybe I felt like, okay, I want this thing to carry, you're in design, you have to know the reason behind everything that you do. Don't just add because I just want this thing to be aesthetically good. The information matters a lot. So if I'm adding a drop
Um,
shadow, can you hear
because
me?
I recently did a design, so I sent it to someone for confirmation
Okay.
before like I post it on my IG. So the person was like, because it was about one sale, so the person was like, the I did one stuff like that. So the person was like, the smaller text at the back was not showing because of the gradient fill I did. So it was
Aha.
like I should add a drop shadow or create
So
a box at the back, then reduce the opacity so it will be able to like so people will be able to read what I wrote at the
beautiful,
background.
beautiful. That's what I was telling you. So if you are making use of drop shadow, that means that you are trying to contrast a particular element from each other. So in this your case, you are trying to contrast the text which you used, which you overlaid on a gradient. So the gradient was taking too much of the design of the text that you applied. So that was why the client was making sure that you apply a drop shadow, hopefully if it can be able to bring out this text or the information that this particular design was on. So do you understand now? So in terms of that, is either in terms of shadow, you need to be wise with the shadows as well. So you don't just apply shadows. If that's the case, if I'm going to troubleshoot the design, like I just want to see the design and just take a look, so I would have make sure that maybe like you just like the yesterday's class was talking about contrast. So make sure that the text you are applying or the color you are applying doesn't overlay or doesn't take too much of the information you want to pass across. Now you want the readers to focus on the information on the text. So the thing that you're supposed to do is just maybe like you tone down the background, or you just think of another background wise that can be able to make the text to show, because it's not advisable that in a long text like that you apply drop shadow, or it's just drop shadow comes once in a while. And creatively, in terms of making a nice design, designer tends not to use drop shadow. If you notice nice design, you hardly find drop shadows. So is what the designers does is that they make use of a clear background. So if you look at this very well now, you can see that there is no gradient on this background, yet it looks clean, and you can be able to see the information that was passed across. So in terms of that, you can tend to just look around, about your background, see what can work best for the font. If there's any way that you can do without the drop shadow, then do without that. But if it's applicable, then use it creatively. So do that answer your question?
Thank you very much.
Are you clear with that now? Do you feel okay with the answer?
So I'll try to make okay with the background.
Yes, if you can just look around with the background, change the background, because let's say, okay, let me take and just make use of this example for you. If you are having a large body of text which is contrast, this information here, hope you can see this, that this contrast is also. So if I'm going to make use of this and I using it in a design, it's better you do off without you applying a drop shadow on this. Do you understand? So what you can actually do to be able to make this design very appealing is to make sure that the background beneath, is clear. So it's either you make use of a shape which is in white and have the text on, or you look around with another background, because it's not advisable for you to apply a drop shadow in this large, volume of text. Do you understand? So it's still advisable on maybe like headings, and if you are using headings, then you tone down, you reduce the opacity of the drop shadow. You have control over the opacity of the shadow, so you can reduce the opacity to be able to make it stand out from the background. But if you have a large body of text, it's better you do off without the drop shadow and find a clearer background to make the text more visible. Do you understand?
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, God. So there's a question in the chat box. Hierarchy is under which of this principle?
It's under design principles, as I mentioned. So we have 5 basic, principles of design. So it's among the 5 principles of design. So it's under contracts actually. So it's under contracts that you have hierarchy. So they work hand in hand. That's why it's been put under contracts, because they work hand in hand. So contrast and hierarchy they are passing same information about you, creating or laying emphasis in a particular design or in a particular work that you are actually trying to create. So hierarchy is under contrast. Do you understand that? Is that clear?
That
So
should be
any other
clear
question?
because the questioner is dropped it on the chat. I hope that should be clear. Okay, the question has answered. Yes, sir. So, any other question? Good man.
No other question for now. And so next week Friday, we'll be treating the power of images. I bet you don't want to miss that session. So kindly drop your feedbacks, your suggestion, and all on any of our social media handles. You can also drop messages in the group chats if you have questions anytime, any day. Thank you all for joining tonight's class. You can all drop your feedbacks. Thank you. Do have a wonderful
Thank
night.
you, sir. Amen. And you too. Thank you so much for this wonderful teaching. We are very grateful, sir.
You're welcome.